And last, now that we have our band message configured, our passwords configured, both user mode and privilege mode, we've changed the host name of our router. We're in really good shape here. But what we need to do now is we actually need to wait to put an IP address on our router so we can connect to it to our PC so the router can do routing, right? That's the whole purpose of this, to connect devices of it so that it can route between 2 or more different networks. So to put an IP address now on our device, we go into configuration, again, configuration mode. And I keep typing config T. So let's just explain what that is. Instead of typing config terminal, you can actually take a little shortcut there and just type config T, and that will bring you to configuration mode. We'll go through more shortcuts like that later on and why that works. That's in the SSH and CLI tricks video. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to put an IP address on Fast Ethernet 00. And the IP address we want to configure there is 10.0.0.1 with a 255.255.255.0 mask. So to do that, we enter the command interface Fast Ethernet 0/0. Now, to put the IP address on, it's a pretty basic command. It's IP space address. If I can spell address. I'm an atrocious speller, by the way. You're going to find this out as we do more and more configs. Fortunately, Cisco has the tips built in to make it a lot easier. So, my IP address 10.0.0.1. So I have IP space address space the address, and then my mask 255.255.255.0. Then I press enter. Now I have an IP address configured on my Fast Ethernet port. Let's take a look at my Fast Ethernet port now using a show command. So I'm going to issue show interface F0/0. Let's do Fast Ethernet 0/0. And when I do that show command, what it does is it shows me a bunch of statistics about my interface. Now this is an overwhelming amount of information. And you don't have to know what all of it is right away. And you should never feel overwhelmed by this. All you need to do is search for the information that you're looking for. So what we want to do is we want to see what the IP address is configured. And if you look in the third line down, it says internet address is 10.0.0.1/24. /24 means there are 24 bits in the network portion of the address, which is the same as 255.255.255.0. We'll cover that in a lot more detail when we dive into subnetting. The big thing I want you to see, though, is the first line right after the show command. The first line, Fast Ethernet 00, is administratively down, and line protocol is down. What's happening here is this line is telling us the states of two different layers of the OSI model. Line protocol is the layer 2, the data link protocol. This is Ethernet at layer 2, and right now it is down. The first field here, where it says administratively down, this is our physical layer information about the status of our interface. That physical layer status can be in one of three states. It can be in administratively down, it can be in down, or it can be in up. Administratively down means I have physically shut down the interface with the shutdown command. All interfaces on Cisco routers come default shut down. So they are always in this shutdown state, which means the administrator put them into that state. The second state, down, means that the interface has potential to come up, but it's just not up yet. Maybe it needs a cable connected. Maybe there's a bad cable hooked up to it. Maybe the switch that it's hooked up to is powered off, or the PC is powered off. So then the third state is up. And up means that we have physical layer connectivity of some kind. On Ethernet, usually we'll get an up state on our Fast Ethernet interfaces even though there's no cable connected, but we know the interface is still in a down-like state because we'll see line protocol is down here. Let's take a look at that. So to move my interface from an administratively down state to an up state, I need to issue a command here. So I'll go into config terminal again, interface fast Ethernet 0/0. Why do we do this 0/0 anyway? Wow, look at all that junk that popped up. My fingers are fat here. Okay. Why do we do 0/0 anyway? Why isn't it just fast Ethernet 1 or fast Ethernet 0? Well, on these smaller routers, it doesn't make as much sense because on this router, there's only 4 interfaces that we can pass traffic. So on these smaller routers, it would make sense to have the interfaces labeled 1, 2, 3, 4. But when we get larger routers, you can have, like I said earlier, up to 400, 500 or more interfaces on those guys. When you have that many interfaces on them, it becomes much more troublesome to manage the names of them. So what we do is we assign the numbers based on a module that they're connected to and then a port number. So in a bigger switch, we might see fast Ethernet 1/1 and fast Ethernet 2/1 and so on. But for the router, we use this convention. 0/0 is the identifier here for this particular connection. The other identifier for our other fast Ethernet port is fast Ethernet 0/1. So it's just the convention we use to identify and call out the interfaces on the device. So we set the IP address on our fast Ethernet interface already. Now we need to make sure that the interface goes from administratively down to up. To do that, I have to issue the no shutdown command. Now that is one unusual command. Let's explain it. If I want to move an interface that is in the up state or the down state into the administratively down state, I issue the shutdown command to the router. When I want to reverse the action of a command on a Cisco router, typically I use the no command to negate it. So if I have the shutdown command issued on an interface, which it is by default, I can issue the no shutdown command to remove that command and change the state of the interface. As a matter of fact, we got a message here saying that line protocol on interface fast Ethernet 00 changed state to up. Let's take a look at that. Show interface fast Ethernet 0/0. How do you like that madness? I just ignored this. I realize that's hard to see. So I can retype that in a second if you want. Show is up here, and then interface fast Ethernet 00 is down here. It was interrupted by my message, but it's still going to work. I'll show you again in just a second. Notice now that fast Ethernet 00 is up, line protocol is up. This is different from before where it was administratively down, line protocol down. Let's look at the config for this. We'll do show running -config. When I do show running -config, here I look at my interface, fast Ethernet 00. It has my IP address configured just as I've done it. It does have a duplex and speed setting on here. These are in the configuration by default. But notice fast Ethernet 0/1's config. It has the shutdown command issued. On fast Ethernet 00, there is no shutdown command because we issued the no shutdown command to get rid of it. Now, the biggest thing that I have trouble with this command, this no shutdown command, it's not so much that it's an unusual command, it's just something that you have to get used to. Because typically when we want somebody to turn on the lights, we don't ask them to say, hey, can you go no shut off the lights? Or how about if you not shut off the lights over there? Well, that sounds like sarcasm in our language, and it just seems odd and unusual, and we don't speak like that. So you just have to get used to this. It's a very common problem in the beginnings of configuring routers of forgetting to issue the no shutdown command. I've already shown you 2 ways where you can verify if that command is issued. One is with the show running config command. You can actually look at the configuration for your interface. The second way is by doing the show interface fast Ethernet 0/0. Ooh, look at this. I typed something wrong. Great opportunity to show you what happens when you can't type right, like me. So, show interface fast Ethernet 0/0. This looks all okay to me. However, I get this message. It says, invalid input detected at the caret marker. This is a message telling you, it's saying, hey, user, you don't know what you're doing. You typed something wrong, and I'm going to tell you where it's broken. And what this is saying is the router understood every letter of this command up until this caret symbol that's located here. So after that, it doesn't know that, and it's because I spelled interface wrong. I spelled it interface. So let's try that command again. Show interface fast Ethernet 0/0. So show interface fast Ethernet 0/0 or show run or both will show you information about the status of your interface. Show running config will show you what you have it configured for. The show interface will show you its actual behavior.